The young girl knelt down, tears streaming down her face, as she desperately pleaded with her father. She insisted that she was innocent and had not committed the act she was being accused of. However, her father's response was harsh and cruel. He slapped her and called her ungrateful, even going so far as to compare her to her own mother, all while tears welled up in her eyes. The girl tried her best to explain that she had been set up, begging her father to believe her. But instead of listening, he turned to his subordinates and ordered them to beat her. They grabbed her by the arms and dragged her away, ignoring her pleas. As she was being dragged outside, the girl continued to scream, desperately proclaiming her innocence and pointing the blame at the mistress who had set the trap. The mistress denied any involvement and accused the girl of slandering her. The father, blinded by anger, declared that his daughter had no shame and ordered her to be beaten further, believing that it would teach her a lesson. In that moment, the girl realized that her father's love was nothing but empty words. He showed no understanding or compassion towards her. She vowed that in the next life, she would make him regret his actions and condemn those who had participated in her punishment to hell. Suddenly, the girl woke up from her nightmare, tears still streaming down her face. She held a hairpin tightly in her hand, trying to shake off the lingering feelings from the dream. She then noticed it's the same hairpin from the dream. The young girl suddenly stood up from her seat and dashed towards the laboratory. Consciousness remains after passing. She and her mentor had researched this. She hoped to find answers. As she approached the glass, nothing seemed to happen when she brought the hairpin closer. However, after a brief moment, the stone she had picked up began to glow, surprising her with an inexplicable light. The stone levitated from her hand, shining brighter and brighter. Suddenly, she felt a powerful force separating her soul from her body, causing her to lose consciousness. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, a young boy believed that someone had sent bandits to harm him. Injured and fearing for his life, he heard a noise coming from the other side of the forest. Thinking it was his pursuers, he braced himself for the worst. To his surprise, it was the housekeeper, her maid, and the servant of the girl's father who had been brought to the forest. The housekeeper hurriedly instructed the servant, while the girl regained consciousness and felt a sharp pain in her head. Confused, she saw a man hovering over her and shouted in alarm. The housekeeper noticed the commotion and realized that he needed to finish the task quickly and report back. The man, with an evil smile, taunted the girl. In a desperate attempt to defend herself, the girl grabbed a nearby stone and struck the man on the head, letting out a scream. However, the man, wearing an unpleasant smile, intercepted her hand with the stone. The man continued to take advantage of her, and despite her attempts to fight back, he was stronger. However, a wounded guy decided to come to her aid and save her life. He took small stones in his hand and prepared to throw them. With precision, he threw 3 small stones at the man and the 2 women behind him, hitting them directly in the head. She was filled with horror and screamed at the sudden and unexpected turn of events. Trembling, she asked who had done it. Suddenly, a guy emerged from behind a tree. The guy turned to the Lady Yi, his gaze revealing that he was poisoned. Lady Yi believed that she was destined to die that day. The guy looked at her with cold, blue eyes and told her that he didn't want the burden of saving her. Desperately, she begged him not to leave her and abandon her to her fate. She realized that she couldn't move her legs and was trapped. So, she continued to plead with him, exclaiming that she would cure his poison. He hesitated after her words, uncertainty evident in his eyes, and asked if the Lady Yi truly knew about medicine. They locked eyes, a strange glimmer shining between them. However, the boy's chest suddenly tightened with immense pain, unable to hide his suffering. Worried, she remembered that she had recently developed an antidote, but she didn't bring it with her. Suddenly, a bottle appeared in her hand, and her happiness knew no bounds. She realized that she could use her mental power to summon objects from the modern era. She looked at him. He made the decision to inquire about what had transpired, so Lady Yi made the choice to disclose the details to him. Despite the medication's side effects, it would undoubtedly be effective in removing the poison from his body. Reluctantly, the man had no choice but to trust her and accept the antidote. Lady Yi recognized his determination and gazed at him with admiration and a glimmer in her eyes. She envisioned a syringe and suddenly appeared, injecting the antidote into his arm. She warned him that it would be painful and that he would need to endure it with gritted teeth and patience. The boy attempted to bear the pain, but it became unbearable, causing him to scream. Although it hurt tremendously, he tried to bear with it. But eventually, he couldn't bear it any longer and collapsed. Lady Yi tried to assist him and assured him that the pain would soon subside. Frightened by the pain, he began to choke her. Despite the lack of air, she persisted, urging him not to bite his tongue. With one hand, she attempted to pry his hands from her neck, while using the other to push him away. Gasping for breath, he intermittently pleaded for patience, acknowledging that she could save him. Suddenly, he released his grip and crumpled to the ground, writhing in pain. Now lying on her lap, he struggled to regain consciousness while she patiently waited. She believed that he had saved her, so it was her duty to save him. Time passed, but he remained unconscious. She pondered whether removing his mask would make him even more attractive, and tentatively reached for it. However, her actions were interrupted by voices emanating from the forest. It appeared that some bandits were searching for Jiu Xiyan, her savior. Fearing the worst, she desperately tried to distance him from the approaching voices. She couldn't bear the thought of him being harmed after saving her life. She dragged him to a nearby cave and concealed him with foliage to ensure he wouldn't be found. In that moment, she realized that if he survived, he would be forever indebted to her. Just as she finished, the men searching for him entered the cave and called out to the others. The bandits, holding torches, stood at the cave entrance and only saw the girl sitting on the ground. They were curious about who she was. She stated that she was kidnapped by a trafficker and she had broken her legs. She pleaded with them to take her along. Their boss, with a menacing look, demanded if she had seen a man dressed in black. The girl informed him that there was indeed a slave trader dressed in black. She begged them to save her and take her away. However, the ringleader was not satisfied with her response and kicked her on the shoulder, warning her not to deceive them or he would kill her. One of the followers expressed doubt that she would dare to deceive them and warned that if they wasted any more time, Jiu would escape. Finally, the bandits left the cave, leaving Lady Yi relieved. Meanwhile, Jiu had regained consciousness and was now sitting down. Lady Yi, with her back turned to him, felt his gaze. When she turned to check, she let out a scream of surprise, but he quickly covered her mouth to prevent the thieves from hearing. She held his hand and asked if he was okay. He reassured her that he was fine. Gu's eyes showed surprise that his antidote had actually worked, despite the city's best doctors claiming the poison couldn't be cured. He never expected this girl to be able to help him. She began examining his eyes for any secondary symptoms, which he was unaware of. Outraged by the invasion of his personal boundaries, he intercepted her hand and demanded to know what she was doing. She expressed her desire to check if he still had any lingering symptoms. Within a short span of time, the poison had almost completely left his body. Nevertheless, he willingly allowed herself to be examined for signs of fever, redness in the eyes, and any changes in the color of his tongue. She felt more excited than before and eagerly to ask him for permission to draw some blood from him. Initially, he became more angry than necessary at this request, even reaching for his sword, but she quickly clarified that she was only joking. This was her way of showing how he treats those who save him. She expressed her disgust by clicking her tongue, only to realize that she had forgotten she was in the ancient era. She acknowledged that with such a severe injury, she would not survive in this time period. She needed to return to the future, and to do so, she had to find that hairpin. She cautioned the man that the poison had not completely left his system and that the cure must be in the palace. She requested him to take her there so she could obtain the necessary remedy. Jiu escorted her to the Grand Palace. While on the bustling main street, all the townspeople couldn't help but gaze at them. Whispers started to fill the air. "Look, it's the 8th prince carrying a girl in his arms," they murmured. Despite the prince's less than appealing looks, the king favored him more than the others. Lady Yi began to feel self-conscious under the intense scrutiny and tried to hide her face with her hands, feeling her cheeks turn red. She thought he was arrogant, as he had narrowly escaped danger the day before and was already flaunting her around the market. As Jiu and Lady Yi approached the palace doors, her father emerged with an exclamation of anger, but as soon as he saw who was with her, he spoke more softly and calmly. Only Lady Yi greeted him, while her father lowered his head, realizing it was best not to anger the eighth prince. Gu's mother was the princess from Zilang, the emperor's favorite concubine. Despite his less-than-perfect looks, Ji Yu concealed his flaws with a mask, but he's the emperor's favorite. Ji Yu was even allowed to accompany the emperor during important meetings and negotiations. Ji Yu had a brother with whom he often played, and one day they stumbled upon a room where a maid was bathing. Startled by their sudden appearance, she let out a scream. The emperor, who cherished his Ji Yu, didn't punish him but simply asked him not to run around like that again. Once, Ji Yu burst into his brother's chambers, brandishing a sword when he found him with a girl. His brother was deeply upset, but when Ji Yu saw what was happening, he pointed the sword at him, warning that anyone who dared to something nasty in his mansion would face dire consequences. Gu severely injured his brother's hand and walked away, leaving him holding the injury with his other hand. Ji Yu was highly favored and angering him was considered a grave mistake. In a calm manner, Ji Yu asked Lady Yi's father if he could be invited inside, as he had carried his daughter all the way and couldn't feel his hands anymore. The father graciously invited the prince into their home. Once inside, Ji Yu approached the throne and gently placed the girl on it. Lady Yi questioned why he was doing so, to which Ji Yu replied that he could put her wherever he pleased. Meanwhile, her father asked Ji Yu why his daughter was with him. A maid then brought Ji Yu and Lady Yi a cup of tea. Ji Yu explained that he had been hunting and witnessed the two ladies harassing his daughter, so he couldn't just pass by. It was clear that Ji Yu had a natural authority, as his mere tone of voice could intimidate her father. Ji Yu gave Jin a displeased gaze, causing him to explain that he had wanted to send her to a remote village because she was stubborn. These words made Lady Yi feel dizzy, and she remembered her promise to make Jin and the mistress suffer and regret everything. Ji Yu coldly and intensely observed the situation, realizing that the daughter of Princess Shu Li's daughter lived a sad life in one family. Ji Yu looked up from his glass to Jin, and asked if he had forgotten that His Majesty had ordered him to treat the princess's daughter well. He quickly fell to his knees in panic and denied it. Gu's anger grew, and he shouted at Jin to stop lying, throwing the cup at him. Jin muttered incoherently when he realized that his cheek was cut by the cup. Lady Yi held her head, feeling a mix of emotions. Stated he could judge her unjustly. The father had made a decision to accuse his own daughter of wrongdoing. Jin, fearing the prince's reaction, spoke up and claimed she's lying. Lady Yi, with a proud expression, rested her face on her hand and suggested that she should ask the mistress first before making any judgments. It was clear that the father did not appreciate his daughter's tone and her audacity to question her mistress's honor. However, Lady Yi's anger subdued her, as she believed her stepmother was unworthy of the title and only her mother deserved to be called the true mistress of the palace. The prince, who was sitting beside her, observed the argument and realized that the girl had a fiery temper. Nevertheless, Lady Yi quickly regained her composure and apologized to her father, admitting that she had been wrongly accused. She felt it was best to act like the original owner of the body. Ji Yu, deciding not to interfere in another family's affairs, stood up and decided to leave. Jin also bid farewell to him. As the Ji Yu left it, Jin expressed his gratitude for bringing his daughter along. However, the prince turned to Jin and informed him that he would be returning to visit in 3 days and expected to see his daughter in a good condition. Otherwise, he warned of the consequences that awaited him. Jin, horrified by the prince's words, wished him a safe journey. Meanwhile, Lady Yi sat in the house, finally realizing that the eighth prince had defended her. The mistress and her maids rushed to Jin, concerned about what had transpired. Jin entered the house with the lady, and she began to inquire about the reason for the eighth prince's visit and if they had caused any trouble. The father was filled with rage. He turned to his daughter and shouted at her to get off the seat. She then spoke calmly and composedly and asked how could the father not realize that his daughter's legs weren't working? If she tried to leave now and fell, how would he explain it to the prince? The lady was displeased with this tone. So she quickly approached, grabbed her arm, and yelled at her. She only spoke of the eighth prince. What a shameless girl she was. Lady Yi refused to let herself be insulted any further, so she removed his hand from her grip and responded indignantly to the lady, stating that this matter concerned the honor of the eighth prince. Really? She wanted to provoke his anger and cause trouble for the palace. However, the mistress started calling her names and she couldn't control her emotions. She was about to say something else, but Jin intervened and ordered her to stop. Jin loudly told the mistress that he wants her to find someone to take care of her and he would hold her accountable if anything happened to her. The lady couldn't believe her ears that the master had come to his daughter's defense and that Jin had raised his voice at her. He couldn't tolerate that his orders weren't immediately followed, so he kicked a chair with her foot, scaring the mistress. When the mistress took Lady Yi away, she warned her with a displeased look not to think that she could do anything under the prince's protection. She threatened to get rid of her, claiming it would be easy. Lady Yi decided to remind her of how she had been treated before by the lady. For instance, she brought up the incident when the lady had given her a drink and falsely accused her of having illicit affairs. The mistress comprehended exactly what the girl was expressing, but she chose to feign ignorance by keeping her head down and avoiding eye contact. Lady Yi was taken aback and expressed her displeasure with how small and dilapidated the house was. This was the final straw for the mistress, and she had the urge to slap the girl. She scolded Lady Yi for speaking disrespectfully to her elders, which only fueled Lady Yi's anger. Just as the mistress was about to strike again, Lady Yi managed to intercept her hand, and push her away, towards the maids. With an indignant tone and an anguished expression, the mistress began yelling at Lady Yi, reminding her that she was the hostess of the house and wondering where she got her insolence from. Determined to provoke the mistress further, Lady Yi yawned and suggested that she should rest if she appeared tired. It would be problematic to see the prince in 3 days. The mistress furiously turned away. Lady Yi let out a sigh and started examining herself. She lifted the hem of her dress and checked her legs, realizing that the blood vessels and muscles are necrotic. Lady Yi closed her eyes and imagined summoning medicines from the modern era. She reassured herself that the most important thing was that her legs were still intact, and the rest was not a problem. She visualized a syringe and it materialized in her hands. She laughed joyfully, expressing her happiness at being able to summon things from the year 2160, despite not understanding what was happening to her.